Welcome to our webinar on the future of work and how to make it possible. My name is Sébastien Tellier, Director of Channel Programs at Martello. For those of you in our partner community, you may already know me from my marketing days at Martello, or we may have crossed paths at a show or an event. I also have the pleasure to be joined today by my colleagues, Dave Spence and Chris Miller from our product management team. Dave and Chris are responsible respectively for our unified communications, analytics, and network technologies product lines. Before we move on, I'd like to ask our attendees about their current infrastructure, if you don't mind. You should see a poll come up on the GoToWebinar viewer. It'll be an interesting information to see later on in the presentation. So do you operate your own data center on-premise or in the cloud? I'm just curious to see how that is shaping up these days. I'll give you some time to answer as I go over the topics we're going to cover today, and we'll get back to the answer at one point in the presentation. After a brief introduction of Martello, we're going to discuss some of the changes that are currently being operated in the workplace and how real-time service delivery is being affected. They will then discuss how monitoring and network testing can help improve user experience over real-time applications and go over customer life cycles for managed service providers. Chris will then go over network consideration in the context of business continuity and for hybrid cloud environments. Finally, we'll bring all those pieces together to see how to maximize digital experience, and we'll conclude with a short Q&A. If you're with us today, I suspect you're already familiar with Martello, or at least with one of our business lines. But for those of you who are new to our webinar track, here's a quick introduction. Martello was founded in 2009, and we're based out of Ottawa, Canada, with offices in Montreal, Paris, Amsterdam, and the United States. We offer products and solutions designed to give service providers and enterprises confidence in the performance of the real-time services that are critical to their business. Our solutions, deployed worldwide in a variety of cloud and enterprise networks, provide top-to-bottom visibility and control over real-time services. This is achieved through a combination of IT visualization, real-time traffic monitoring, and network performance and optimization. The three main categories of our product offering allow us to analyze, monitor, and control enterprise networks and enhance the services they enable. With our IT operations analytics software, you can consolidate data and alerts from multiple sources into a single pane of glass. This includes cloud and virtualization environments like Azure and VMware, but also real-time services like Office 365 or Martello Performance Analytics. With our UC performance management software, you can measure real-time traffic like voice, video, and collaboration tools to evaluate for jitter, echo, and delay, and test proactively against those measurements to ensure positive user experience. Finally, with our network technology portfolio, you can take control of the network. With native uptime and optimization features, Martello helps keep networks and services accessible, whether on-premise or in the cloud. Finally, digital experience monitoring is at the crossroads of these product portfolios. It focuses on creating a complete picture of the end user's experience by analyzing usage and performance of IT resources over all application and services that an end user interacts with. Remote work is nothing new. People have been connecting to their office infrastructure for years while traveling for business, working from home, or while visiting a customer. In recent years, however, thanks to the internet and cloud-based technologies, we've had the ability to take our office resources wherever we go through our laptops and smartphones. For businesses, this means more flexibility and the ability to remain productive even when they're forced to shut down their offices for whatever reasons. For service providers, this means new opportunities, but also new challenges as more and more variables and environments need to be taken into account when it comes to user experience. And with the shift to remote work accelerating, as we're collectively experiencing these days, user experience is more important than ever. As I mentioned, IT professionals are facing new challenges. The graphic I'm showing on screen right now reinforces some of the trends that we're seeing with end users, things that we're also hearing from Gartner analysts, that there's an explosion in activity in terms of people working remotely. Given the current circumstances we're all facing, again, that's not really a surprise. But breaking down and quantifying these changes helps us to understand how you can prepare for them. The graphic on screen shows a comparison of average hourly data usage between January and March 2020. As you can see, the peak usage in the evening and early morning hasn't changed all that much. The daytime usage, however, has increased significantly. We're seeing near 35% increase in the 9 to 5 window, which we usually associate to a normal workday. This is creating new stresses and challenges for people who need to manage both the network and the delivery of the services that enable remote work, and as they set the stage for the future of work. When it comes to the delivery of real-time services, we're also seeing changes. IT departments no longer have the same level of control and visibility over the components that sustain those services. For example, historically, if somebody were to use Microsoft Unified Communications Suite, the Microsoft partner would go to their client's office or data center, depending on the size of the company. They would deploy servers in the data center or in their server room to run things like Skype for Business, Exchange servers. Then, to make sure things are running smoothly, they would deploy some application or network management tool to manage all of the components needed to run those services. And that's how you would ensure that end users could communicate between each other and with the outside world. Now, looking at the results that we had from the poll earlier, I see that 56% of our attendees have data centers on premise, while 11% have moved everything to a public cloud. 33% have a complicated story with their data center, which leads me to believe that there's a hybrid cloud infrastructure at play. All in all, it tells me that over 70% of people on this call have resources in their offices that need to be accessed by remote workers. This is exactly the type of deployments and the type of situations that we can help with. In the case of those attendees where all resources have been moved to the cloud, there's still a play. Those services are even more complicated to measure because we've lost control over it. Which leads us to the next step of this slide. Those servers that we're referring to in the case of Microsoft Solutions, they often no longer exist. You have servers on premise, but a lot of those services no longer exist physically in your data center or in your customer's data center if you're a service provider. Those services are now in Microsoft's data center, and users access it through a web browser with the power of internet. The tools needed to understand if end users can access these services, let alone the quality of their experience or where problems might be and how to solve them, these tools are now completely different. With nearly all employees moving away from the office, at least temporarily, new tools and techniques are needed for IT departments and managed service providers alike to ensure quality of experience in increasingly complex and hybrid environments. With that in mind, it's important to remember that user experience is not static. Organizations evolve, and so do their requirements, whether in IT, communications, or networking. Helping service providers who manage that technology lifecycle is core to Martello's value offering. And with that in mind, I hand it over to Dave Spence to present some of those tools.
Thanks, Sebastian. I appreciate the introduction. So I've been involved in delivering unified communications to the market for over 20 years. And I just wanted to share some of my observations with regards to what we're calling the customer lifecycle management. And this has to do with how do you qualify your potential UC customers? How do you make sure that their experience is going to be good before you deploy your unified communications and extend it out to the remote worker? The next piece of the customer lifecycle management that we think is extremely important is the ability to monitor the solutions in real time. From monitoring, we can then look at the analyzation of that data, provide some troubleshooting tools, and then at the end of the journey is the optimization of the network if it's required. So with this 5-step approach, we believe that this is the cradle to grave behavior that you're going to want to be able to deliver to your customers and to your remote workers. So with that, let's take a look at what pre-site qualification really is. So over the course of the past, couple of years, as people are moving to their remote locations, we found it imperative to come up with a way to qualify those locations. As a channel partner, you may not always know what your customer's network is going to look like. And so it's nice to be able to have a web-based tool without having an executable or a file that you need to download, where you can send a URL to a potential customer or even to one of your users to do a quick assessment of their network to make sure that it is up to speed to support unified communications. So in this example, we were able to run a quick test over the course of about 25 to 30 seconds, and it gives you a nice snapshot to be able to say, yes, this user's network is going to support the deployment of a remote work environment, whether that be a soft phone, whether that be Skype for Business, whether that be any of the unified communication tools that are out there. So once you've identified that your customer is going to be able to support a remote work type of environment, you can then move on to the monitoring aspect of our solution. And so if you're looking from a monitoring perspective, you can see that we take the perspective of a single pane of glass. So the example that you're seeing on the screen here is one of the largest boards of education in the United States. And from a NOC perspective, as an administrator, I can sit back in the comfort of my home, whether I'm at the cottage, anywhere where I have a broadband connection, and I can see all of the locations that I'm monitoring from a unified communication perspective. I can see voice quality, I can see when it's starting to degrade, and I can act on that. without having to roll a truck, without having to get out of my chair. I have tools that are available to me at my fingertips to monitor the solution and to take actions. I can see alerts and alarms that are coming in from the different locations. I can assign tickets and I can assign technicians to those problems to make sure that they're resolved in a timely manner. Let's move on to the analyzation. So once our solution is in place, we have the ability to start to collect data on the user experience. So we can do things like monitoring of voice quality over time. If you look at the graph on the bottom left, what this is showing is that as call volumes increase, call quality tends to degrade. This can be caused by a number of factors. And again, having the information at your fingertips will allow you to start to troubleshoot the problem before your customers start to complain. Over on the right, you're going to see a KPI-based voice quality report. What this allows you to set is a minimum threshold for voice quality. And if you want, in this example, we've got 95.36% of my users are experiencing good voice quality. So you can set a line in the sand that says, once I drop below 95, I want to be notified and I want to figure out where those problems are. With this report, you can define voice quality by subnet so that, again, in your network, you may have a subnet that is causing problems, and it'll help you easily troubleshoot where those voice quality problems are coming from. We also differentiate between external and internal calls to point you in the right direction if people are starting to complain. And the other thing that we also identify is teleworkers versus internal communications. We know that teleworkers can often have a lot more impairment based on their home networks. And so it's nice to have that information at your fingertips when you're trying to troubleshoot UC and voice quality problems. Let's move on to the troubleshooting aspect of the solution. So if and when you do see a customer or potential user that's having problems, without having to roll a truck or without having to get on the phone and walk that person through some troubleshooting tips, with our solution, we can start to run synthetic transactions through your network. And what this allows you to do is to either set up ad hoc or scheduled testing through your network. And there's a couple of examples here where you can see I'm mapping some jitter that I'm starting to see across a remote user's network. And what that allows me to do is allows me to go back to the service provider or to the internet provider and say, listen, I'm starting to detect a lot of jitter at different times of day. And they can potentially take action to solve those problems. We provide 4 kinds of synthetic transactions. We provide SIP call tests, external call tests to make sure that users can access the outside world. We can do trace routes through the network, and we can do registration, SIP registration testing back to the call controllers. So again, these are all tests that can be run ad hoc from a user's remote location with a few clicks of their mouse without having to involve any third parties or have the customer or the partner download any external tools. So let's move on to the optimization. So when and if you've got to the end of your journey and you've gone through the list of tools that we've provided to help with the UC experience, the last thing that we can offer is a true optimization experience. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Chris.
Thanks, Dave. So one of the things we're going to look at this morning is where are we keeping our data? And with networks today, we can kind of break that up, and our applications are generally in 3 different places. So I'm intentionally going to talk about these a little bit backwards. So with our environment today, suddenly we are testing our networks in ways that we probably haven't in the past. So for those of you that have moved some of your applications into the cloud offerings, these have probably been the ones that have been the nicest transition. Your information's already in the cloud. It's already been designed to be accessed remotely. And while, yes, there have been a few hiccups and some cloud providers have definitely had to spin up some more servers and bandwidth, overall, that has been a pretty good experience so far. Then moving to our on-prem, in which from our poll, there's a lot of people that still keep a lot of their applications on-premise. So this has probably been one of the areas that have been scrambling the most. When you keep your information on-prem, and whether that's been decided by business decisions or regulation, suddenly now you're just trying to get access. So a lot of people are trying to get VPNs and things like that, which often have limits. So at this point, I know some businesses are having to, roll shifts where some, employees are working morning shifts, other employees are working evening shifts to, try to work around those limitations. I would also guess right now that a lot of you that are in this on-premise situation are starting to evaluate some cloud offerings and or a hybrid cloud approach. So moving on to the hybrid cloud. This is kind of the best of both worlds because you have some of your applications that generally have been designed more onto the LAN networks. And you also have some of your applications that are already facing to the public internet. Now, in the past, a lot of times with this hybrid approach, our internet or remote users have been kind of a smaller check mark. So you may have an outside sales force or, a few people that work from home, but generally a lot of our users, have been on net. So this is where we're having to right now change our approach and start to make that a better user experience. So when we look at the hybrid cloud approach, there's a couple things that we need to take in mind. First of all, connectivity. So if your users cannot get to the cloud, it's going to be a failure. But we need to take that connectivity a little more than just, a simple VPN into a cloud or into an application. So now we need to look at two things like DNS redirection. What happens if my primary data center is congested or has some sort of issue? How can I take that DNS traffic, move it to another transport or another cloud, another data center? And we also have to look at inbound and outbound geographical balancing. So in the past, we looked at a lot of times, being able to get outbound, maybe have primary circuits and secondary circuits and redundancy, but it was all on how to get outside of the internet. Now suddenly we've had to turn around and look at that from a 180-degree approach. How do we get back in? So that's where we also need to be able to take our traffic and be able to balance that, between circuits, between data centers, and make those decisions not just in a primary, secondary, but, based on different decisions so we can take applications and have them prioritized for the best user experience. So with that, it leads me on to prioritization. So once we connect to the cloud, how do we make that user experience the best it can be? So we still have our quality of service available, and we know when things go across the internet, it is going to be what it's going to be. But we can definitely, at our cloud level or at our data center level, make reservations to make that experience the best we can. So we may use traditional QoS to reserve space on different links. We may reserve that for voice. We may reserve that for video or other key applications. Now, along with that reservation, then we can go ahead and take that to the next level. And that's where we have the ability to do application prioritization. So in the past, we look and, we think of voice and video, things like that as being our top applications that we tend to prioritize the most. But there definitely could be other applications that are just as important to you. Could be things as simple as credit card traffic, point of sale equipment, whatever the applications you need to run your business, you need to be able to take those and put those in a high priority. And again, if you have multiple clouds or multiple data centers, we need to be able to have that information or those applications accessed for the users that are going to have the best possible experience. So if we take a quick look, this can look complicated, but we at Martello have spent a lot of time and effort to make this sort of transition easy. So things like SD-WAN, link balancing, we've done a lot of work to put in things like zero-touch provisioning, where, we can look at different models and do a lot of that provisioning for you. Again, we want to be able to implement this without really the users knowing that anything has changed. And then after installation, we want you to be able to monitor and troubleshoot, again, be able to take a look at problems before the users realize it. And so, we've got a lot of tools in place that can help you with that.
All right, thank you, Dave and Chris. With the decentralization of services and the multiplication of endpoints, it's easy for IT specialists to get lost in a maze of intertwined systems and services. And with the complexity of having so many people outside of the normal environment, these tools and these different ways of improving overall performance described by my colleagues are key for the future. Modding and control, as we've seen, are two crucial parts of delivering unparalleled digital experience. In Gartner's latest market guide on digital experience monitoring, or DEM, they report that by 2023, 60% of digital business initiatives will require infrastructure and operations departments to report on users' digital experience. up 15% from today. Compared to just a decade ago, when I&O leaders rarely had to think about their employees' digital experience when making decisions, this has become a new way to evaluate the IT success and failures of a business. This shift in decision-making brings new challenges for IT departments as they attempt to effectively manage digital applications. The need for remote work has employees moving outside of the traditional infrastructure and using voice, video, Collab, and VPN to stay connected. This type of real-time traffic is tightly intertwined with underlying network performance, but also a number of other data sources. We've seen how we can track and measure user experience and different ways you can make it better by managing the network infrastructure. The third pillar that we described earlier, needed for you to prepare for the future of work, is the capability to visualize the data of everything else that may have a negative impact on user experience. DEM, or digital experience monitoring, only goes so far as the data entered into it, however. So collecting and analyzing data from multiple sources is very important to its success. Having actionable data can help find and resolve issues quickly before the end user experiences an outage or performance degradation. So we see 4 key elements to that last pillar here, the analytics pillar. First, the ability to organize data in a flexible way to create customized dashboards. Every organization has different needs, different offices, different services, different skill sets. There are lots of different ways that you can structure this data based on what makes sense to you or your clients, and share that data when and where it makes sense. This is especially useful in answering an angry executive why they got dropped during an important call, for instance. Second, we don't want users to have to try and manually map an IT component when they're trying to troubleshoot a problem. You need to have all that information at your fingertips on the one end to understand the business impact, and on the other to resolve that problem as fast as possible while keeping priorities in mind. Being able to trace the source of the issue to its source. Is it an application problem? Is it a network switch dropping sessions? This also allows you to measure service availability against SLAs and prioritize interventions to make sure that you can deliver on those SLAs or that your provider's SLAs are being met. It's a two-way street. Third, and tied to that last point, some companies struggle with millions of unique alerts every day. That may be an extreme situation, but even thousands of alerts a day can be very difficult to manage, especially in organizations where IT resources are limited. And that may lead to what we call alert fatigue, especially if you don't have an automated approach to handling those alerts. We provide a number of ways to create workflows between your different service management flows so that any number of alerts that may be related to a single problem can be correlated and only show as a single incident. This allows you to take quick, decisive actions to maximize impact and accelerate time to remediation, thus improving user experience when a call is dropped. You can ensure that it doesn't happen again. Finally, this is all made possible by providing a unification strategy to IT professionals. Historically, you might need to go to multiple stakeholders, use several tools, and therefore several screens and windows, and hurt your neck in the process, and stitch all that information together. Martello ingests the different data flows from monitoring systems, public cloud providers, and service management tools, and puts the issues right in front of you so that you can have a bird's eye view of everything you need to guarantee peak digital experience to your users. For IT personnel, digital experience monitoring provides countless opportunities to simplify the way they interact with clients, whether internal or external. More than fixing issues, DEM is about seeing service as complex interactions of systems and data streams. Understanding these interactions is crucial in predicting and preventing poor performance. From the end user's perspective, however, it's only a question of whether the call was good or bad. So that's how you need to be able to answer them. With remote work being among the forefront of today's challenges in business, it's important to draw on cases where organizations are able to maximize the resources available to them to give them the best possible user experience. On screen, we have 3 examples where Martello was able to help organizations make sense of that complexity while providing them with the tools to resolve problems quickly and efficiently, and solutions to help make sure they don't come back. As discussed earlier, digital experience will only grow more intertwined with business success. A good user experience over mission-critical services is essential to productivity, wherever the user may be. Now, digital experience monitoring is the big future that we're driving toward to disrupt the industry by teaming elements of our technology offering the three different groups that we discussed earlier into a single platform. What would typically require a business to purchase from three separate vendors and three different platforms becomes available in one platform, with additional modules layered on as we expand available technologies through future developments and acquisition. This also means that these solutions are available for service providers to help provide the same value to their own end users. We hope you enjoyed this presentation and that the different topics covered by our experts gave you a better view of what's required in preparing for the future of work. Now we have a few minutes left to take questions if the group has any. So our first question, how has people moving to remote work changed voice quality as a whole? Interesting question. I think that's one for you, Dave.
Yeah, that's a great question. I get asked that all the time, especially in the last few months with everybody, having to work from home. How does voice quality impact? And I think it goes back to what I was talking about with regards to being able to, in the old days, we were always concerned about on-net traffic. And now it's really about having the tools to be able to monitor the remote traffic and, being able to pre-qualify or being able to troubleshoot people's home networks is really the most important aspect that you need to be prepared for as people move home and take their teleworkers with them. Are you prepared and ready to start to monitor those devices as they leave your corporate network? And I think that's really the key. And as I said, there's lots of tools that are out there. You just have to find the one that's right for you.
Thanks, Dave. We have another one here. I think the topic is on hybrid cloud. Chris, this one's for you. If a business wanted to adopt a hybrid cloud solution, what would be the best place to start for a quick win, a quick deployment?
So when you are ready to start transitioning off of the on-prem environment and moving into a cloud or hybrid cloud, some of the suggestions that I can give you is take it one application at a time, because there's many different answers for that. So for some of your applications, there may be a software as a service offering that may make sense. For others, it possibly could be a platform as a service, or it may be into some sort of data center adoption. Whether that be in traditional data centers, whether that be in an Azure or Amazon. If you look at it at an application at a time, you can make the best decisions per application, which is going to give you your best overall user experience.
Thanks, Chris. I don't see a whole lot more questions coming in, but we have another one. That last question seems to be fairly easy, so I'll take it. And with remote work being on everyone's mind, how does Martello enhance digital experience? I'm going to take that question and flip it a bit and say that in order to bring those solutions to end users and organizations, we like to partner with channel partners and managed service providers to deliver those services. So the services that are used by organizations are usually delivered by a third party, and we provide the tools to them in order to bring that value. So for instance, if you're looking at a quality of calls and you want to have that call measured and ensure that the quality is good in the future, you can now correlate data from a poor call with information that the partner would collect from SolarWinds or PRTG or any network monitoring system. And it would reveal that high packet loss on one of the routers, like we discussed earlier, but with a switch. That high packet loss on a router was the source and the cause of the user's bad call. So reaching that conclusion could have taken several days in a normal environment. With Martello, this would have been correlated using our IT analytics, and the source of the problem would have been identified in just a few seconds. So from there, you can put smart failover, and you can put uptime policies, you can apply QoS, and you can apply all those remediation solutions that Chris discussed in order to prevent any of these issues to arise in the future. Or if one such spike comes back in the future, you can save the query to easily search for it. And that way you will have incremental time and resource savings in the future. I see that there's another question. So we're being asked what types of partners do we engage with and for go-to-markets. We have a strong partnership historically with Mitel, for instance, but we also engage with managed service providers in any variety of the solutions that we have. So as our digital experience monitoring solutions continues to evolve, we'll of course like to offer the full package experience, but we also have these different solutions that are offered individually to certain providers to provide value to increase user experience. So we have a wide range of partners today, including resellers, value-added resellers, service providers, local ISPs, wireless ISPs, and managed service providers. It's a diverse world, and we know that there's no one way of delivering services, but we like to provide a solution that hopefully can assist and provide increased performance for all those models. If you think of something else, please feel free to write to us at info@martellotech.com. And thanks again for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you also to my colleagues Dave and Chris for joining me today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.